everyone, welcome to another episode of Educatalk. Today we invited an aspiring educator to discuss with us the curriculum evaluation through learning assessment. Let us all welcome Ms. Kathleen Haneta from Mindoro State University. Hello Ms. Kathleen. Hello, how are you? I'm good. It's nice to have you here again. Yes, actually it's my second time here. The previous discussions tackled the understanding, interpreting, and applying the concept of curriculum development. Now with Ms. Kathleen Haneta, we will continue to understand that curriculum can be evaluated right inside the classroom. Yeah, and as a would-be teacher, it is important to note that the process of finding out if the planned, written, or evaluated curriculum are functioning as intended in the assessment of learning is very crucial. The question lies on how does the teacher know that the students have learned from what has been taught. Many educational practitioners agree that the measure of one's teaching is indicated by what the children have learned. The teacher cannot claim that he or she has taught if the students have not learned anything. I agree with that, and by now we are excited to learn from you. Again, to discuss with us the curriculum evaluation through learning assessment, let us have Ms. Haneta. Hello future educators, at the end of this presentation, you are going to finish this crossword puzzle. The different clues can be found in the different parts of this video. So, kailangan nating manood ng maayos. So, this crossword puzzle is part of your evaluation in this module. Again, thank you and good luck.
Welcome to Lesson 5.2, Evaluating Curriculum Through Learning Assessment. The following are the expected learning outcomes to be met at the end of the presentation. First, explain how a curriculum can be evaluated through the assessment of learning outcomes. Second, identify the levels of learning outcomes vis-a-vis level of assessment. Third, match the levels of learning outcomes with the appropriate assessment tools. And fourth, interpret the value of assessment in terms of grades assigned. Start with, let me discuss the Philippine Qualification Framework. The Philippine Qualification Framework is a reference system of national standards of what qualifications one has earned by education and training in the Philippines.
This framework specifies what an individual has learned in and out of formal schooling.
This is based on the qualification, levels, and degree of competencies on knowledge, skills, applications, values, and degree of independence.
A person is still qualified if he or she achieved the specific learning outcomes necessary for the academic, work, and community requirements for which an official qualification recognition shall be conferred.
So this is the Philippine Qualifications Framework. As you can see, it is divided into 8 levels. The first level is to be achieved by grade 12 graduates who can be awarded a national certificate or the NC1 if qualified by the TESDA. The other level of qualifications progress along the educational ladder in the Philippine educational system from grade 12 in basic education to higher education from baccalaureate to doctoral and postdoctoral levels.
In all the 8 levels, the individual is expected to achieve a specific standards and competencies as evidenced in the learning outcomes. The competencies are clustered into 3 domains. The first one is the knowledge, skills, and values. The second is the application. And the third one is the degree of independence and responsibility.
Levels and competency descriptors required for each level for basic and higher education levels. This table shows the different competency descriptors required for each basic and higher education levels. The first column contains the 3 domains, and opposite to it are the competencies described separately for grade 12, baccalaureate degree, master's degree, doctoral and postdoctoral degree. As you can notice, the higher the education levels, the higher ordered thinking skills are required to reach the competencies. For example, on the third domain, we have degree of independence. For grade 12, the required competency is the ability to apply skills in varied situations with minimal supervision. On baccalaureate degree, is the ability to work independently alone or in teams. While on the master's degree, the competency required is to work independently. And lastly, for doctoral and postdoctoral degree, the competency required is the ability to be highly independent in work, initiate and lead, and initiate others. Matching the competencies and outcomes with a PQF by doing learning assessment.
The mastery of the learning outcomes in terms of knowledge, process, understanding, and performances are measured in the formal education starting from the basic education.
In 2012, DepEd issued Department Order No. 73, which is the K-12 grading system. That department order is known as the K-POP grading system. It stands for Knowledge, Process, Understanding, and Performance. So in this table, you can see in the first column the different levels from level 1 to level 4. Let us take a look on the level 1. In the description or under the description of learning outcomes, the level 1 is the knowledge, which requires the use of factual knowledge, conceptual, procedural, and metacognition. The sample guide question is, what do you want your students to know in terms of facts, concepts, procedure, and multiple thinking? For example, the parts of the body or describing a typhoon. On the second level is the processes or the skills that the students use based on the facts and information for making meaning and understanding. The question is on what do you want your students to do with what they know. For example, is dissect a frog and identify the different major body parts. On the higher level or level 3, it is the understanding or making meaning to big ideas and concepts. The question is, what do you want students to understand? For example, how do the elements of weather interact to produce climate change? And for the level 4, under product performance, which can be oral, visual, or written, or projects, serves as the evidences of learning. The questions are, does your portfolio display evidence to show learning outcomes achieved? Or what research paper can you undergo to report on the conservation of indigenous plants?
Knowledge, process, and understanding are learning outcomes. The three types of learning outcomes in different levels can be achieved in many ways through the use of appropriate tools. Objective type of tests are tests that require only one and one correct answer. It is difficult to construct, but it is easy to check.
Under the pencil and paper test is the simple recall, or the most common tool to measure knowledge. This includes the fill in the blanks, enumeration, identification, or just the simple recall. The next is the alternative response test. This is a type of paper and pencil test where two options or choices are provided. The items can be stated in a question or statement form. For example, a true or false or a yes or no. The third one is the very common multiple choice test. This is the type identified as the most versatile test type because it can measure a variety of learning outcomes, consisting of a problem and a list of suggested solutions. The incomplete statement or direct question is called the stamp, while the list of suggested solutions in words, numbers, symbols, or phrases are called alternatives, options, or choices. There should be 3 to 5 options in each item. The correct alternative is called the answer, while the remaining options or choices are called the distractors, or decoys. Multiple choice tests can be presented into two ways. The first one is the correct answer type, and the second one is the best answer type. Next is the matching type test. The most common matching type test is made up of two parallel columns. The first column is the premise that presents the problem, and the second column provides the answer. There are many modified matching types as well. So So when do we use the matching type? Matching type test is useful in measuring factual information as well as relationships between two things, ideas, or concepts. Some of the relationships that can be matched are found in the matrix below. For this one, try to guess the relationship that can be used in the matching type test. For example, persons and achievements, dates and historical events, and terms and definitions. What about principles? It is illustrations. And what about the parts? It can be their functions. And what about machines? Yes, it can be the uses of the machines. And what about the diseases? Yes, it can be their causes. Very good. Matching type also comes into two types, the perfect matching type and the imperfect matching type. The former has a number of premises in column A which is less than the number of responses in column B, while on the latter, the number of premises in column A is not equal to the number of responses in column B. We also have the subjective test. And yes, learning outcomes which indicate learners' ability to originate and express ideas is difficult to test through objective type test. Hence, in this type of test, the subjective test, answers are done or given through reflections, insights, and opinion and can be given through essay. Under the subjective test is the essay. Essay are test items allowing students freedom of response. Students are free to select, relate, and present ideas in their own words. The type of answers will reflect the extent of the learner's knowledge of the subject matter, ability to use higher order thinking skills, and express ideas in an accurate, creative, and appropriate language. We also have this restricted response item. This is like an expanded form of short answer type objective test, where there is a limit on both the content scope and the form of student response. It is the most useful in measuring learning outcomes requiring the interpretation and application of data in a specific area. Another is the extended response item, where the student is generally free to select any factual information that can help in organizing the response. The contents of an extended essay will depend on the analysis, synthesis, evaluation, and other higher order thinking skills of the test takers. Assessment tools to measure authentic learning performance in products, or the KPUP.
The level 4 of learning outcomes in KPUP can be assessed through performance or product. These learning outcomes can be best done through the use of the authentic assessments. Authentic evaluation is a type of evaluation that measures real-life tasks, performances, or actual products. The most common of the authentic assessments are the performance assessment and the use of portfolio. Checklist is a tool that consists of qualities that are expected to be observed as present or absent. Rating scale is a tool that uses a scale in a number line as a basis to estimate the numerical value of a performance or a product. The value is easier to score if the points are in whole numbers. And the most popular rating scale is the Likert scale. A portfolio is a compilation of experiences as authentic learning outcomes presented with evidences and reflections. And to assess the total learning experiences as presented in the holistic package, an assessment tool called the rubric is utilized.
Levels of assessment for the levels of learning outcomes.
Levels of assessment describes levels of learning outcomes, which are the knowledge, the process or skills, understanding, and the products or performance. The levels of learning outcomes are also used to describe the levels of assessment. In other words, the levels of assessment also follows the levels of thinking skills, from lower to higher level.
This table shows the levels of assessment for the levels of the learning outcomes. In the first column, we can find the three levels. For the level 1, which is the knowledge, what needs to be assessed are the questions who, what, when, how, and why. The type of assessment that can be used is the pencil and paper or non-paper and pencil, and the percentage value is 15%. On the next level, which is the process skills, the constructed meaning from knowledge is what being assessed. The type of assessment is similar to the first level and the percentage value is 25%. On the highest level, which is the understanding, it assesses the explanations, interpretations, applications, empathy, perspective, self-knowledge, big ideas, principles, and generalization. The type of assessment that can be used is also through pencil and paper, comprising the highest percentage value of 30%. Placing value to assessment results from KPUP to written work, performance task, and quarterly exam. While the KPUPs is still utilized in the grading system, however, it has been slightly modified by the WWP-TQE. A summative assessment is composed of written works, performance tasks, and quarterly assessment. This will be explained in the table below. For the first component, which is the written work, the assessment is done to assess the learner's understanding of concepts and applications of skills in written form, and to prepare learners for quarterly assessments. It is given at the end of the topic or unit. For the second component, which is the performance task, it involves students in the learning process individually or in collaboration with teammates over a period of time. It also gives students opportunities to demonstrate and integrate their knowledge, understanding and skills about topics or lessons learned in a specific real-life situation by performing and or producing evidence of their learning, gives students the freedom to express their learning in appropriate and diverse ways, and encourage students' inquiry, integration of knowledge, understanding of skills in various contexts beyond the assessment period. This assessment is given at the end of the lesson, focusing on a topic, skill, or lesson. It can also be given in several times during the quarter. For the last component, which is the quarterly assessment, the purpose is to synthesize all the learning skills, concepts, and values learned in the entire quarter, and it is given only once at the end of the quarter. Grades at the end of the school year and how these are computed. In the kindergarten, instead of numerical grades, checklists, anecdotal records, and portfolios are used, which are based on the kindergarten curriculum guide. In the junior high, the average of the quarter grades produced at the end of the year grade. The general average is computed by dividing the sum of all final grades by the total numbers of learning areas on which all of them has equal weights. For the senior high, the average of the quarterly grade produces the semester grade. The general average is computed by dividing the sum of all semestral final grades by the total number of learning areas. So this is the senior high school grading components. As you can notice, it is the performance task that comprise the higher percentage value, and the highest of them all is the work immersion or research, covering the 60% of the grade. Reporting summative grades by quarter or semester or end of the year. Interpretation of the numerical values for all subject areas is based on the minimum initial grade of 50, transmuted into an equivalent of 75 in the report card. The numerical grades are described in the different levels of proficiency in the different competency set in the subject area. So for advanced, the grading scale based on the transmuted values must be 90% and above. In order to be proficient, the grade of the student must be 85 to 89%. Approaching proficiency between 80 to 84, developing is 75 to 79, and for those who have grades 74% and below, they will be graded as beginning.
And that ends my discussion on the curriculum evaluation through learning assessment. That ends our today's episode of